A little shocked when it came out. It's one of those things, it's inevitable for all of us. We're all going to walk away. Sometimes you walk away on your own terms, sometimes you don't. I think it's pretty cool he got to walk away on his own terms. That was Kirby Smart on Atlanta Radio 929 talking about Nick Saban's retirement. And it is hard. It is hard to talk about one and not the other. Nick's most successful time at Alabama was when Kirby was with him. That wasn't Nick's only successful time, but that was, a very successful time for sure for Nick and everything that he had, made, created, whatever you want to call it at Alabama. I mean, he was a superb head coach after Kirby left, but it's hard to separate these two. I'm going through pictures as I do it here. This image here was Nick and Kirby just before the first national championship they played against one another, the first, which is kind of amazing. That was a Sunday before the Monday night game. Of course, you remember that Monday night game was the 2nd and 26 miracle from Tua to Devonta Smith. I very much remember the rain and having to wait on the president. That was neither of those were good or fun things. But what the pressure coming into this thing now for Kalen DeBoer is going to be significant. This was Nick's first season at Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, and I was on the field and saw him walking by. This was before Nick became a legend. To be honest with you, this was before any of the national championships at Alabama. Excuse me, he had won one at Auburn. This game, Matthew Stafford, one and done, threw it, touchdown in the corner of the end zone, and then we were all hit with bottles of liquor. Here's Mark and Nick before the 15 game, Georgia-Bama, another rain game. And Alabama just destroyed Georgia that day. That day was when I knew before. That's one of the few times before a game I knew there was no way Georgia was winning that game. No way. This was from a couple weeks ago with Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship game. Last time we'll see these two with Nick and Kirby, the two of them shaking hands there at the logo. And there's one image I did want to show y'all of Kirby and Nick from years and years ago. Here's another one of Mark and Rick and Nick. This is really probably the greatest SEC championship game ever, which is the 12 game. It was a day before, the two of them posing for that national with the national championship on the line for sure. But here's Nick and Kirby talking. This is just a total one-off image. This was after the two of them worked together at the Dolphins, and before they worked together at the Dolphins. Nick had just taken the Miami job from LSU. Look how young Kirby is there, man. We don't see pictures of me being young like that, but we all were. And Nick looks good there too. Shit, man. Look, Nick always looks good, but I don't remember why I took this image. This was during the NFL. I'm about to call it pro days. It was their workout for the NFL teams, and Kirby had just gotten hired by Mark Richt. So this was the 2005 team in the spring, and him and Kirby had worked together at LSU, and he hired him about 12 months after this to come work in the Dolphins with him. And then, of course, when he took the Alabama job, Kirby went with him. There is no better tandem of recruiting that we've ever seen than those two being on the same staff. Of course, here's David with David Posh. Should probably quit calling people by their first names, but when you know them by their first name. Here's Nick Saban with David Pollock. But I remember that time, and it was a very different time in the Southeastern Conference, and Nick changed all of that when he got to Alabama. He did not change it at LSU. He did not change it at LSU. He changed it at Alabama. And here, speaking of LSU, this couple of images from him is sideways, so I don't really bother with that. This is a 2003 game between Georgia and Bama. And it's Georgia and Bama, Georgia and LSU, and Mark and them had just won the league, and Nick looks very young there, but that game was the first time that I had ever covered a game that Georgia lost. I'd never seen them lose a game covering the team before then. That's not true. I misspoke. A regular season game. I covered a game where they lost to Boston College. But Nick Saban has been around forever. And that game at LSU, of course, was the Tyson Browning game and then the Skylar Green game, if you remember any of those people. But that was an amazing game in the SEC. Georgia's games at LSU have been epic. Every single time they've played over there lately, 1998, 1998, 2003, 2008, those games were epic. Have they not played at LSU since? I don't think they played. This for all this discussion of Georgia and Alabama never playing. Georgia and LSU have not played at Death Valley in almost, we're coming on 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. Georgia's not played live at Tuscaloosa in front of a sellout crowd at Alabama since 2007, since the Stafford overtime game. Georgia hasn't played at LSU, unless I'm forgetting something here. Georgia's not played at LSU since 2008 with A.J. Green and Noshawn and Matthew. That's just too long. Those two teams should be playing more often than that. That's not good. It's not worth Missouri and Texas A&M for Georgia not to play at LSU. But oh no, they did. Excuse me. I just went on a giant rant. I forgot about the 2018 game. Yeesh. Well, thank you for sticking with me. I think a lot of people were trying to forget that game. That game was a great win for LSU for sure. But still, they played once since then. It's just ridiculous, And LSU's only come to Athens once, which was 13. So I mean, we got to get this to where these teams are playing each other more often, and hopefully they will. But Nick changed the league in a way that Urban Meyer did not, and in a way that no one else did. Steve Spurrier changed the league. There are three league-changing coaches, and I don't think Kirby can, and I'll get to that in a second. Bear Bryant for sure, Steve Spurrier, Nick Saban. And the reason why I don't think Kirby can change the league, although I might be wrong about saying that, and we're going to see, Kirby is doing what Nick did. Urban Meyer this is really going to sound harsh, but in the grand scheme of things, he was a flash in the pan in this league. He was here and then he left. He won, 2 national championships, one with Chris Leak, one with Tim Tebow. The 6 team was predicated on defense. The 8 team was predicated on speed and offense. He wasn't at Florida for very long. I mean, he got there at 5 and he was gone after the 10th season, so not long. Nick has coached in the SEC for almost a quarter century. I mean, he's been around for a while. And what he did, obviously Bear Bryant did it with scholarships too. Not only did he run Georgia Tech out of the SEC, but he did it with stacking scholarships and just winning, Steve Spurrier changed the way the sport was played. I mean, particularly in this league. Nick did it with relentless work and relentless recruiting. Kirby's doing virtually the same thing. I think the difference could be, Nick won 6 6 national championships. He won 2 of them while Kirby was at Georgia. Kirby's won 2 while Nick was at Alabama. Nick did not start his program at Alabama with a juggernaut like Georgia is now or Alabama has been in the league. And I talked to some people about this who have their view of the world. And I said, you don't think Florida was like that? No. the answer is no from a lot of people. And if it were built that way, it wouldn't have crumbled so quick in 2010. I mean, it just crumbled. Now, that was with Urban as the head coach. He basically quit. Nick put him in the hospital, or however you want to put it. I mean, you cannot compare Urban Meyer to Nick Saban. It's not the same. It's not the same. One is way better than the other. But, Urban was a ratchet up. He was going for it harder. And he was different than Mark and Phil Fulmer and Lou Holtz and people like that. He was different than Spurrier. So it would become a different ball game. But really, Nick Saban changed the league and started the dominance of the league. I mean, you really should start with the 06 Florida team, and then LSU, and 7 in Florida, and then Bama. But the chokehold on the national scene was not the league completely. It was Alabama. There were times, obviously, Auburn, LSU won national championships, but then they won multiple national championships. Florida disappeared. Tennessee beat Nick once. They beat him one time. So he eviscerated a major program. I mean, between Nick Saban and Mark Richt, Tennessee was blown up. One before the other, but still. And he changed the league with relentless recruiting. And having Kirby on that staff was having Kirby on Nick's staff at Alabama was the ultimate 1-2 punch. The ultimate 1-2 punch in Hunger Games of recruiting. They were never going to lose someone they really, really wanted. They signed 3 legit running backs that year that they had Alvin Kamara come in. I mean, that was a scary bunch. And, Derrick Henry comes to mind. And the other thing about Nick and Kirby both, they may well have done it both at the same time. I think Nick did it a little quicker. They both adjusted offenses. Kirby wanted more explosive playmaking. He went out. He went from James Coley, which was probably his biggest mistake as coach. He went from that to, oh my God. It's amazing to me that I've forgotten his name suddenly, which is saying something. But Todd Monken. And, you see it now with Mike too. These are offensive coaches that want to explode on you and want to score a bunch of points, throwing it, running it, whatever. They didn't have that in 19. And Kirby, it took a little bit of time, but then they exploded on people in 01. In 21. I mean, it was just, so they both, Nick and Kirby, went away from grinding you down on defense exclusively to scoring a pile of points on you in with explosive offense, not with necessarily running it, but with explosive plays, throwing it, running it, however with dual threat quarterbacks, Stetson Bennett, Tua and Jalen, I would not call Bryce Young but Jalen Milroe certainly is a dual threat. So it cannot be understated that you don't have the current league that we're living in without Nick. I think that he's as consequential a coach as the league has had, maybe ever. It's the best. He's the best coach in college football. But he changed the conference when it looked like the conference just couldn't change anymore. Urban changed it a little bit, but not like Nick. And that's why I wonder if Kirby can change it, so to speak. My caveat with that is we're entering a different time. So it may be that he does have the ability to change it because of the way that Georgia attacks NIL or the portal or whatever. I think the thing that everyone, if you're this long in the video, and you're sticking with me, that means you're probably a Georgia person, to which I would say I think the thing that's the most dangerous for the SEC is Georgia getting its act together. And they have. I do not think it's out of the question at all that Kirby Smart passes Nick Saban on national championship lists and the amount that they have, because Nick's not around anymore to stop him. You know, Nick has stopped Kirby from winning 2 national championships, and you know you can just do the math. But it will be a very different SEC without Nick Saban around, and it will be not as difficult. It just won't be, because when you have the best program and the best team, which he had the bulk of the time that he was at Alabama, the bulk of the time, not all the time, you're going to win a lot, and he did. And we'll just see how it goes from here on out. But I tell you what, I think it's opened up for Kirby and Georgia, needless to say, and we'll see if they'll take advantage of it.